Good evening. We continue to bring you the very latest on this horrific terror attack which has taken place in Awantipur in Jammu and Kashmir, not too far from Srinagar. It's the worst attack on security forces perhaps ever in Jammu and Kashmir. More than 40 soldiers have been killed. There is a sense that that number could go up further. It could rise further. The attack took place at about 3:30 this afternoon on a convoy of the CRPF which was on its way from Jammu to Srinagar when it came under an attack in Awantipura, about 20 kilometers from Srinagar. There was a vehicle with hundreds of kilos of explosives on board. It was a suicide vehicle which rammed into a bus. We are told that perhaps all of the soldiers on that one bus have been killed. There were lots of injuries as well, and a lot of these soldiers, in fact all of them who were still alive, were taken to the Army's base hospital in Srinagar. However, there are casualties there as well. The number of 40 dead is what we are reporting now. The real concern is that this could go up even more. This is a very sad day for India. It's a sad day for CRPF. It's a sad day for any goal, any effort at trying to bring about peace in Jammu and Kashmir. Just in the last little while, there's been a formal statement from the government of India which says we condemn in the strongest possible terms the cowardly terrorist attack on our soldiers in Pulwama. This has been perpetrated by the Jaish-e-Mohammad, a Pakistan-based and supported terrorist organization proscribed by the United Nations and other countries. This terror group is led by the international terrorist Masood Azhar, who's been given full freedom by the government of Pakistan to operate and expand its terror infrastructure in territories under the control of Pakistan and to carry out attacks in India and elsewhere with impunity. There have also been statements which have been made by ministers, including the Home Minister, that India will respond at a time and place of our choosing is usually the words which I used. It wasn't used on this occasion, but several ministers, including the Minister of State for External Affairs, General V.K. Singh, has said that India will respond. We're going to try and bring you as much of the story as possible. But I also spoke to the governor of Jammu and Kashmir earlier on. But before I go to him, I want to go across to my colleague Nazir Masoodi. Nazir, at least 40 soldiers have died. Is there any update on the number of brave hearts who've lost their lives?
Well, if we see official number from the CRPF, it is still 37. But unofficially we have been told that around 40 people have lost their lives in one of the deadliest attack in last 3 decades of militancy in Kashmir. And Jaish-e-Mohammad is behind it, and the attacker is a young 19-year-old local youth, Adil Ahmed. He is from Kakapura, from Pulwama district. Less than a year ago, he had joined Jaish-e-Mohammad, and before he carried out this deadly suicide attack, they had uploaded a video of him wherein he is talking about carrying out this attack. 2 days back, Jaish-e-Mohammad had actually uploaded a video on social media and shown a video of blast in Afghanistan, then threatened to carry out similar attack in Kashmir to inflict casualties on security forces. According to state intelligence officials, that video and the input was shared with the police and other security agencies. But the fact is, nobody had inkling where the attack would take place. They were all taken by surprise, and the way young local boy from the Pulwama, he managed to get all these explosives. He was trained for all along for last near 1 year for such an attack, and indoctrinated, motivated to become a suicide bomber, and nobody had inkling what is happening. So it is clearly a major intelligence and security failure, and about 40 CRPF Jawans have to pay a price with their lives because of this failure.
All right, Nazir, just one moment. I just want to go across to some of my other guests as well at this stage. But before I actually do that, I just want to take a look at some of the political reactions which have come in.
आज कश्मीर में हमारे सीआरपीएफ के बहादुर जवानों पर जो आतंकवादी हमला हुआ है वो पाकिस्तान स्थित और उनके द्वारा संरक्षित आतंकवादी संगठन जैश-ए-मोहम्मद ने किया है, जिसकी मैं और सारा देश भर्त्सना करता है। इस आतंकी हमले का समुचित जवाब देने के लिए सारा देश एकजुट है। हम अपनी जिम्मेदारियों को अच्छी तरह समझते हैं और देश की जनता को यह भरोसा देते हैं कि इस पर जो भी कार्रवाई करना आवश्यक है उसे करने में हम कोई कसर नहीं छोड़ेंगे।
बहुत सारे सीआरपीएफ के जवान पाकिस्तान के भेजे हुए आतंकवादियों ने घात लगाकर उनको मौत के घाट उतारा है। मित्रों, इस समय मुझे चिट्ठियां भी आई, अब क्या करोगे, कैसे करोगे। इस तरह समय, इस वक्त समय है वो जवानों के, शहीदों के परिवार के साथ निशब्द उनको संवेदना भेजने का। मगर भारतीय जनता पार्टी की सरकार ने अपना रिकॉर्ड बरोबर रखा है, बरोबर रिकॉर्ड रखा है। उरी की घटना के बाद सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक कर हमने दुश्मन को समझाया था कि अपने आपे में रहो, वरना भारत की फौजें आपका हिसाब किताब ठीक कर सकती है।
This is a dastardly act, but at the same time, I find this as an opportunity through you to also call to question those who, while living in India, while calling themselves or describing themselves as mainstream politicians in Kashmir, tend to be apologetic about all these terror activities. There should also be an equal amount of action or taking to task those who, while living in India, seek ministerial berths through farcical elections by posing as mainstream politicians, and they day night deliver such statements which tend to provide fodder to terrorism.
CRPF के जवानों की बड़ी बहादुरी साथ में वो वहाँ पर आतंकियों से लड़ रहे हैं और ये जानकर ही इस तरह का डरपोक हमला किया गया है। और इस आईडी ब्लास्ट में हमारे जवानों को जो शहादत मिली है, ये देश का हर नागरिक इसको भूलेगा नहीं। देश के लिए उन्होंने अपना बलिदान दिया है, लेकिन इतना कहकर भी हम सरकार खामोश बैठने वाली नहीं है। ये बहुत दुखद है, हम लोगों को चैलेंज के रूप में हम इसको देखते हैं और इस घटना का हिसाब चुकता होगा और न ही हमारी इन आतंकियों के खिलाफ की हरकतें जो करते आतंकी, उसके खिलाफ की कार्रवाई रुकेगी नहीं। और भी जवान अपना हौसला बुलंद करके अपने साथियों की इस शहादत का बदला भी लेंगे और इस आतंकी को समाप्त करने का जो हमारा निर्धार है, इस पर हम डटे रहेंगे।
पुलवामा में जो आतंकवादी हमला हुआ है, जिसमें हमारे जवान शहीद हुए हैं, इसकी वजह से हम ये अनुचित समझते हैं कि हम अभी राजनीतिक चर्चा करें। मैं आप सबसे आग्रह करूंगी और रामलाल राही जी से, अवतार सिंह भटाना जी से, जो हमारी पार्टी में आज शामिल होने के लिए यहाँ आए हैं, आप सबसे आग्रह करूंगी कि 2 मिनट की श्रद्धांजलि हम ऑब्जर्व करें शहीद जवानों के लिए। और मैं उनके परिवारों को कहना चाहती हूँ कि इस दुखद घड़ी में एक एक देशवासी आपके साथ है। हम सबको बहुत दुख हुआ है, आप हौसला बनाए रखें, आपके साथ कंधे से कंधे मिलाकर हम खड़े हैं।
Well, I spoke to the Governor, Satyapal Malik, a little while back. Here's what he said. Sir, your first thoughts at this terrible disaster?
My first thought is with the family of the bereaved, जो लोग हमारे मारे गए हैं उनके परिवारों के साथ है और उनकी आत्मा की शांति प्रदान करने की तरफ है। और सेकंड थॉट इज दैट यस वी विल, इसका हम पूरी मजबूती के साथ जवाब देंगे। जिन फोर्सेस ने किया है या जो फोर्सेस इस सब के पीछे हैं, उनको बख्शा नहीं जाएगा और हम टेररिज्म का यहाँ नामो निशान मिटा देंगे। पिछले 4 महीने में एक भी लड़का नया भर्ती नहीं हुआ था, पत्थरबाजी रुक गई थी, चुनाव हुए थे, चिड़िया नहीं मरी थी। तो पूरा फ्रस्ट्रेशन था इन पाकिस्तान में और यहाँ के जो टेररिस्ट सपोर्टेड लोग हैं, उन्होंने जानबूझ के फिर इस हरकत को कराया है और हम इसका कड़ा जवाब देंगे। दिस इज ट्रू, मुझे यही बताया गया कि देयर वाज समबडी inside the vehicle was full of explosives and he just hit the soldiers' vehicle. After 2-3 days, we'll have a big meeting of Army, CRP, BSF, police and everybody, and we'll have security review करेंगे और उसमें जो नतीजे निकलेंगे उसके मुताबिक नया वो बनाएंगे SRP.
Well, joining us now to look at what's been an absolutely horrific day, an attack on the CRPF, Lieutenant General Shankar Prasad, the former Director General of Infantry of the Army, G. Parthasarthi, this former senior diplomat. Brigadier Sandeep Thapar, also a recently retired senior officer of the Army, and Commodore Uday Bhaskar with us in the studio. Brigadier Thapar, let me come to you first. What exactly is a road opening party? What is its responsibility in clearing an area?
Vishnu, firstly, it's a terrible incident, and my heart goes out to all the families of those who lost their lives. My condolences, and I hope the injured get well soon. CRPF doing a fantastic job in the valley, and I know they'll take this as a temporary setback and bounce back. Now, as you're aware, NH44 is the main highway through which movement takes place. The convoy days are invariably laid down up and down both convoys, and the entire stretch, the Jammu to Srinagar stretch, is about 300 kilometers. With the Nasri tunnel, it's shortened by about 30 kilometers. 100 kilometers of this is north of Pir Panjal, that is into the valley. The areas are divided, demarcated, and responsibility fixed. Generally 8 to 10 to 12 kilometers is given to one company to open. These people start off early morning with all the instruments, with their dog units, with signal vehicles, and they search the entire area. En route, they deploy parties at likely sites, ambush sites. They deploy some elements there. QRTs are left at various places, and they physically search and dominate the area till the convoy passes. And they withdraw only after the convoy has crossed, all the convoys or vehicles have crossed them. So that, in a nutshell, is the way a road opening party
works. All right. Mr. G. Parthasarathy, what do you believe is really the way forward now? Because there's already this clamoring for military action, for some sort of retaliation. We've seen political leaders say this as well. How is it perhaps more important at this stage to stay calm, to revise our security strategies on the ground, and to ensure that this sort of suicide attack is thwarted in the future?
Permit me to give your listeners a rather larger perspective on Pakistan and its terrorist activities. A few weeks ago, President Ghani threatened them that if they continue helping the Taliban, there were a lot of discontented Pashtuns in the tribal areas from a Pashtun movement, and that they should bear that in mind. Then something very strange happened, which came to my notice. On the 12th, the Iranian news media came out with a report that a Iranian patrol near the border of Pakistan was attacked by a suicide bomber, and 28 Iranian soldiers lost their lives. The Iranians made it very, very clear in their reporting that this would be neither forgiven nor forgotten, and there would be retribution. And they made it very clear it was from across the border. This morning, the Pakistan press carried a report in their internet versions, which obviously under government advice has now been removed, that the Iranian ambassador had been summoned because on the Iran-Pakistan border, 6 of their soldiers were killed, 14 injured, quite obviously alleging that the Iranians were involved. So Pakistan is into all sorts of activities on the Afghan border, on the Iranian border, and the Iranian border bearing in mind that they need Saudi money, and the Saudi...
So, no, one sec, Mr. Parthasarathy, I need to move on to my other panelists as well. I think the point that you're trying to make is that the terrorist infrastructure in Pakistan operates at various levels. It operates in Kashmir, it operates in Afghanistan.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the point is, within the region they stand exposed.
Right.
With Iran, Afghanistan and India.
All right. General Shankar Prasad, and I'm asking this, carefully and responsibly, because I'm not clamoring for instant military action or something like that, because I'm not sure that wise military thinkers necessarily just act in a knee-jerk reaction. But that said, we've had surgical strikes in the past. We have a certain capability. Do you believe that in the foreseeable future, a military course of action could be what we see in retaliation?
Vishnu, what is the near future? Are you looking at a few days? Are you looking at a few weeks? Or are you looking at a few months? I'm not too sure what is your time frame for a reaction. Rajdeep, let me make a bigger point, and I'm sure Ambassador Partha Sathi will endorse it. We are today lacking a strategic culture, and we are lacking a credible military response. We don't have a military response. I'm not trying to suggest that we want to go to war. Look, what does national security mean? National security means that you should have robust diplomacy. Robust diplomacy is adequate today. We have strategic partnership with America, with France, with Russia, with Israel, with UK, and many other countries. We have a strong economy, reasonably strong economy. We have a strong leader and a reasonable political party. But the political class is all divided, and every time you want to create a strategic superiority, a credible response to Pakistan, then these political parties will go to the televisions and all over try and see that the military doesn't get strong. I'm sorry, the tactical response is possible. The tactical response took place soon after Uri, which was the surgical strike. I place the surgical strike in the realm of tactical response, which the Prime Minister said a year and a half ago, soon after Uri, that we are leaving the military to do a tactical response at a place and time of their choosing, which the military did whatever they felt was right. That also got politicized. Anyway, leave it there. But the Prime Minister said, I have to develop a strategic response. How long is that strategic response going to take? We have heard this Muhtod Jawab day after. I do not know what you said about Muhtod Jawab today. Was it recorded or was it today again? I have heard this Muhtod Jawab for the last so many years. It seems like it's a recorded version.
No, but General, I just want to bring you back to the point. General, I want to bring you back to the point. What? General, because I have other panelists and I know everybody is emotional, but General, my question to you is specific. Do you believe there should be a military reaction? And if there is one, do you believe it might happen immediately, or do you believe it could happen later on?
Immediate is military action, immediate, I do not bother about. It's a tactical action. It will be similar to what the surgical strike was. What results it will bring, I do not know. You know what results the surgical strike brought a year and a half ago. It can happen tomorrow, it can happen day after tomorrow, I don't bother about it. I am bothered about a strategic response.
Okay.
It is only the strategic response that will give you some long-term results.
Okay, I want Commodore Uday Bhaskar to build up on that point. The point that the General makes is that a tactical response, in other words, a relatively instant military response, might be something that takes place on the ground. Whether or not it actually achieves anything is a larger issue. But in terms of a larger, broader military response combined with a diplomatic response, how do we continue to lag against Pakistan?
Well, first of all, I think today's incident should call for a very deep kind of review, both at the tactical level and at the strategic level that General Prasad and the others have been talking about. My own take is, Vishnu, that first of all, today's incident would have to be examined internally at a tactical level. We've spoken about possibilities as to why it happened. And I think there are 2-3 strands here that we need to reflect on. I think earlier in the program we spoke about 350 kilograms of explosives being brought into a vehicle. And what does that mean? What does it imply? What is the inference we draw? Whether or not it was a lapse and how did it occur is something that the people on the ground would have to address, and they have had more than 20 years of experience. But the nature of the attack, if it is indeed a suicide attack, a Fidaian, and further investigation will confirm this, and the Jaish has made a claim, I think that would point to a certain path that the internal violence and terrorism is taking place, and which means that our strategic response for the long term would have to look at the cost effectiveness of what we are doing. So my own, at this point in time, the assessment and the recommendation is that we have adequate resolve to deal with this tactically, and we have to get into the nuts and bolts, which I think were earlier flagged in your program. For instance, the convoys. Basic things like, can our convoy protection be better?
Yeah.
Even in terms of the nature of the vehicles.
So we'll talk about that in a moment. There's a reaction which has come in from the External Affairs Ministry. I'm joined by my colleague Nidhi Razdan. Nidhi, what does the statement say?
Well, the government of India has said, that it condemns in the strongest possible term the cowardly terrorist attack on our security forces. They have gone on to say that this heinous act has been perpetrated by the Jaish-e-Mohammad, a Pakistan-based and supported terrorist organization proscribed by the UN and other countries. They've gone on to, then say that they appeal to all members of the international community to support the proposal to list terrorists, including Masood Azhar, as designated terrorists at the UN and to ban terror organization operating from territories controlled by Pakistan. The Indian statement, Vishnu, doesn't name China, but China is the only country that is really blocking India's efforts to get Masood Azhar designated as a global terrorist at the UN. China has repeatedly over the years used its veto to actually block this move by India. In fact, not just India, but other countries, including the US, the UK, France, India's allies in this war on terror have moved resolutions at the UN in the past to try and get Masood Azhar on this list, but China has repeatedly blocked that. So the Indian statement doesn't name China, but it does name Pakistan, saying again that Pakistan should stop supporting terror groups operating from their territory and dismantle the terror infrastructure there. So this is the first official reaction from the government of India tonight, Vishnu, from the Ministry of External Affairs. We just now wait and see what more action follows diplomatically and otherwise.
All right. Yes, go ahead, sir.
I just want to finish, now that the statement has come, which I think is along expected lines, that we need to get a quick tactical appreciation and really review things that have been said for the last 20 years. I mean, many of these points were made after the Kargil war and the Kargil committee report about the nature of internal security. We are talking about things as basic as bulletproof vests.
Yep.
And I've heard this being said by people from the CRPF many times.
Yep. That
unlike the army, for instance, they say that we have no MIBAP.
Yeah.
Now, that's a very sad reflection of the reality on the ground. So my, earnest appeal is that tactically there has to be a very rigorous review of what could be deemed as lapses.
Yeah.
But I think the political compulsion is what really begs attention, Vishnu, that at a moment like this, there should be some kind of national resolve that we are dealing with a proxy war that began in 1990.
Right.
It does see sharp spikes. Uri was one example. Today we're going to talk about what happened in February of 2019. I think for our political leadership and the parties, much as we hope that they would behave in a different way, that this is a time to close ranks so that whatever the country wants to do has to go beyond the current election, go beyond the current government, and we evolve a long-term strategy that we are all talking about, wherein the cost effectiveness for the next 5 to 10 years is assessed by the professionals, because this is neither the first attack nor is it likely to be the last attack.
Okay,
so
I'm just going to
ensure that we don't pay such a heavy price.
I just need to take a short break. We'll come back with more. It's a very sad day for India. More than 40 soldiers of the CRPF have been killed in a horrific improvised explosive device blast in Avantipur, not too far from Srinagar. It was a suicide vehicle. It was a SUV laden with more than 300 kilos of explosives which rammed into a CRPF bus. We'll take a short break and we'll discuss how the dynamics of terrorism in Kashmir could be impacted by the nature of this attack. Stay tuned. Welcome back. In case you've just tuned in, let me remind you of the horrific news which has come from Jammu and Kashmir today. More than 40 soldiers of the CRPF are dead after a suicide vehicle, an SUV, rammed onto a CRPF bus which was part of a convoy which was passing through Avantipura in Jammu and Kashmir, just 20 kilometers short of Srinagar, which was its destination. In fact, this wasn't the only vehicle in the convoy. There were 78 vehicles in the convoy, and more than 2,500 soldiers of the CRPF who'd left Jammu at about 3:30 a.m. in the morning. The attack took place at 3:30 p.m. in the afternoon. There were thought to be more than 300 kilos of explosives on the vehicle, and the impact of the destruction was huge and it was horrific. Many of the soldiers who lost their lives eventually died in hospital. They were taken to the Army's base hospital in Srinagar by some of the other vehicles on that CRPF convoy. Throughout the evening, there have been several reactions which have come in. The government, the Home Minister specifically, has said that there will be a reaction. India will avenge the death of these soldiers. There has been a more calm reaction from the External Affairs Ministry, which has pointed out the role of Pakistan in supporting terrorism. On the ground, we are told that there is a security meeting, a review which was bound to take place. The governor is looking to it very, very carefully, and there are quite clearly concerns about the nature of the attack itself, the fact that this was carried out by a suicide bomb on a vehicle. Let me go back to General Thapar very briefly on this. General, the road opening parties actually sanitize a particular area. They try and see if there are explosives which have been planted underground or on the side of the road. But in this case, a vehicle has been used. How does this represent a bigger threat for security forces?
Are you asking me, Vishnu?
Yes, Brigadier Thapar, go ahead.
Vishnu, see, what happens is that while the road opening takes place in the morning hours and you continuously dominate the road, the normal traffic keeps moving. There are places the normal civilian traffic is checked. But imagine the volume of traffic which travels up and down. It's probably physically not feasible to check each and every vehicle to the extent which needs to be. And it has happened that this particular vehicle has slipped through the radar. Now there are crossing places for vehicles where generally civilian vehicles are made to stop when the convoy is moving, and once the convoy moves, then they're allowed. So could it be one of these areas where the vehicles were stopped while the convoy passes? Then you got to realize that 70 vehicles makes the convoy very slow. A normal turn also where vehicles slow down extends the convoy a couple of kilometers, and the speed comes down. So it makes it very, very feasible for any terrorist with the means to attack an isolated vehicle. So it is not physically possible to remove all kind of threats, but yes, you can take precautions. You can identify places where you think something of this nature could happen. You could be more careful while moving. It is obvious that some kind of a security lapse, too early to identify, has taken place. Whether they were temporarily halted or they were slowed down, or the vehicles which had stopped, civilian vehicles, were not checked or monitored, and this happened. Another thing I want to bring out, Vishnu,
yes,
is that you're talking of 300 and 350 kgs explosive. While this is conjecture, 350 kgs explosive, volume-wise, it is very difficult to fit in an SUV which doesn't have a dicky, probably under the seats or under the body. You don't require 350 kgs.
Yeah.
Much less explosive, properly utilized shaped charge could cause as much damage in a bus, and that what seemed to have happened.
Yeah, that's an important point. General Prasad, one last word from you before we let you go. The need to protect the CRPF or convoys, there has been talk of armored buses, that's not been provided. There is a certain routine that needs to be followed in the movement of these convoys as well. In other words, not just the routine, what I mean to say is a certain gap needs to be maintained between the vehicles, a certain speed needs to be maintained. And this was an incredibly large convoy, 78 vehicles, because the last few days apparently they couldn't move because of bad weather. So do we need to revise A, protection to these convoys, and B, the way they actually move?
Well, you asked me the correct question. The SOP needs to be looked at again. We have a standing SOP on road opening parties that needs to be reviewed. Vishnu, what really surprises me, if you and I go anywhere in Delhi, to any function or any place or any hotel, our dickies are open and checked, our bonnets are open and checked, somebody puts a mirror under a car. Here is a vehicle going with large quantity of explosive. Whether it is 300 kgs or 30 kgs, we do not know. Perhaps 300 kgs is what everybody is claiming. It's a huge amount. Why was this vehicle not checked? When in Delhi we are checking vehicles, why are these vehicles not checked in Kashmir? In every 200-300 yards in Delhi, quite often you find police nakabandi, and vehicles have to slow down and the police looks inside and lets us go, seeing that people are looking like normal people. But why is it not happening in Kashmir? Obviously, while we mourn the death of these 40-odd people, we also need to look at as to where the shortfall occurred. There is, and we need to upgrade his road opening status. We need to perhaps use helicopters to see that they fly over the convoy.
That's an important point.
What's happening right
and
left of it.
Sure. Gentlemen, I'd like to thank both of you very much for joining us. I'm just joined at this stage by SP Vaid, the former Director General of Police in Jammu and Kashmir. Thanks very much, sir, for speaking to us. The entire business of moving large numbers of police forces across the state through areas which are very vulnerable, how is that challenging? How would you respond to a few people who say that in fact they need to be moved by air because it's simply a safer option? How would you reply to that?
See, last time when Amarnath Yatra attack took place, and if you recall, there was during the parliamentary election violence in Chadura district, when Srinagar parliamentary election was taking place. The reason was the forces could not reach in time. Most of the time, this highway has a lot of problems. You know, it's under construction, under repair, gets blocked. There are vagaries of season, snowfall. So it would be much easier. I at that time suggested much easier, and I think maybe economical and less cumbersome for the Jawans to fly them from Delhi to Srinagar and back, those proceeding on leave. Much easier, just 1 hour flight. And if that could be done, it would be. You can save number of lives. You can carry them much easier. They will save time. It will be much. They will lot of inconvenience to the Jawans while traveling. It takes 2 to 3 days from Delhi to Srinagar.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Mr. Vaid, very much for joining us and sharing your expertise, somebody who's actually seen the situation on the ground very, very closely. Well, I did speak to the Governor of Kashmir, Satyapal Malik, a few hours back. Here's what he said. Mr. Satyapal Malik, sir, your first thoughts at this terrible disaster.
My first thought is with the family of the bereaved, जो लोग हमारे मारे गए हैं उनके परिवारों के साथ है और उनकी आत्मा की शांति प्रदान करने की तरफ है. और सेकंड थॉट इज दैट यस वी विल, इसका हम पूरी मजबूती के साथ जवाब देंगे. जिन फोर्सेस ने किया है या जो फोर्सेस इस सब के पीछे हैं उनको बख्शा नहीं जाएगा और हम टेररिज्म का यहाँ नामो निशान मिटा देंगे. पिछले 4 महीने में एक भी लड़का नया भर्ती नहीं हुआ था, पत्थरबाजी रुक गई थी, चुनाव हुए थे, चिड़िया नहीं मरी थी. तो पूरा फ्रस्ट्रेशन था इन पाकिस्तान में और यहाँ के जो टेररिस्ट सपोर्टेड लोग हैं उन्होंने जानबूझ के फिर इस हरकत को कराया है और हम इसका कड़ा जवाब देंगे.
मिस्टर मालिक, हाउ मेनी सोल्जर्स हैव डाइड, सर?
अब देखिए, मैं एग्जैक्ट नंबर में नहीं बता सकता, जो टीवी में आ रहा है उसी के आसपास कुछ है.
Mr. Malik, is it correct that more than 40 people, 40 soldiers have lost their lives?
एक मिनट होल्ड कर रहे हैं. जी बोलिए. जी क्या कह रहे हैं?
हाँ, Mr. Malik, who is behind these attacks?
Naturally, Pakistan, nobody else.
Mr. Malik, is this the Jaish-e-Mohammad which is behind these attacks? Because in the last 1 year, the security forces and the government has claimed major successes against the Lashkar and the Jaish.
Yes, it's visible. उसी से फ्रस्ट्रेट होके उन्होंने किया है और ये बिल्कुल वो पैटर्न है जो ये अफगानिस्तान में करते हैं.
Mr. Malik, can you confirm, sir, that there was a suicide bomber who was there on a vehicle? That this vehicle rammed into a bus?
This is true. मुझे यही बताया गया कि there was somebody inside the vehicle. Vehicle was full of explosives and he just hit the soldiers' vehicle.
Governor Malik, how many people are injured in hospital? Can you give us an idea? What is their condition?
I don't have exact numbers.
Is there a concern at this stage that a political blame game has started and that this needs to end? Because this is a law and order situation, it's a humanitarian crisis, it's a security crisis.
ये उनको सोचना चाहिए जो हर वक्त टेररिस्ट की सपोर्ट में बोलते हैं, उनके घरों पे जाते हैं, टेररिस्ट मरता नहीं है उससे पहले उनके यहाँ शोक व्यक्त करने चले जाते हैं और आज वो सारे चुप हैं. उन लोगों को सोचना है. उन्होंने पिछले 15 दिन में यहाँ बहुत माहौल खराब किया था, ये उसी का नतीजा है.
Mr. Malik, what is going to happen now in as far as the movement of the CRPF is concerned? Are you going to change your security posture because of this suicide vehicle being used?
After 2-3 days, we'll have a big meeting of Army, CRP, BSF, police and everybody and we'll have security review करेंगे और उसमें जो नतीजे निकलेंगे उसके मुताबिक नया वो बनाएंगे SRP.
Mr. Malik, in the last 15 days, you said the atmosphere, the mahal had changed. How has it changed in the last 15 days?
In last 15 days, you just see the statement of the political leaders. They are talking of communalism. They are talking that we are playing with fire and what not.
Sir, intelligence-based security in Jammu and Kashmir is the basis of all security. Would you say that there was some sort of an intelligence concern over here, perhaps a failure at identifying this threat?
Intelligence failure was not there because inputs were there.
Yes.
But yes, some लापरवाही was there because इतना बड़ा गाड़ी में आप भर के चले आए और आपको कहीं चेक नहीं हुए हो, तो वो हमारी नाकामयाबी जरूर है.
Mr. Malik, do you believe that the strategy of security forces needs to change considering the threat of car bombs?
Yes. Time to time it should be changed. As the threat goes, the security situation changes, security strategy changes.
All right, that was the Governor of Jammu and Kashmir, Satyapal Malik, speaking to me a little while back. Let's go across now to NDTV's Neeta Sharma, who also who's been tracking all the developments at the Home Ministry. Neeta, firstly, we believe there's going to be a Cabinet Committee on Security meeting which is going to take place tomorrow morning. But quite besides that, what is the thinking now in the Home Ministry about the nature of this attack?
It's a very serious attack. The Home Ministry has taken it very seriously, Vishnu, and they're saying that they are going to take every step to ensure that such an incident is not repeated. Even till late night, the Special Secretary Internal Security and the Joint Secretary of the Kashmir Division were holding meetings. They were preparing reports. As you know, the Home Minister is leaving for Kashmir tomorrow morning. The Home Secretary has cut short his visit from Thimphu. He's also coming back tonight, and he would also be accompanying the Home Minister for his visit tomorrow to Kashmir. As far as this attack is concerned, they are saying that, there were some kind of indications that there were threats which were, anticipating from Jaish-e-Mohammad, and they were not taken very seriously. In fact, this video of this attacker was also shared by Jaish supporters through an application called Telegram. So, various angles are now being investigated, and one of them is the use of social media also, that how this video was circulated among the youth there also in Valley also. And another thing which is a very serious concern for the Home Ministry is homegrown terrorism, because till date, each time the Home Ministry was highlighting this point that terrorism, originates from Pakistan. But in this case, this boy was a local. He was a local from Kakpura, and he was the executor of the attack. So this is a very serious concern which the Home Ministry and various intelligence agencies are going to address in the very near future. Vishnu?
All right, Neeta, thanks very much for joining us. A huge security concern, the nature of this attack, lots of points mentioned by Neeta over there. There have been lots of political reactions. Let's listen into some of them.
आज कश्मीर में हमारे सीआरपीएफ के बहादुर जवानों पर जो आतंकवादी हमला हुआ है वो पाकिस्तान स्थित और उनके द्वारा संरक्षित आतंकवादी संगठन जैश-ए-मोहम्मद ने किया है, जिसकी मैं और सारा देश भर्त्सना करता है। इस आतंकी हमले का समुचित जवाब देने के लिए सारा देश एकजुट है। हम अपनी जिम्मेदारियों को अच्छी तरह समझते हैं और देश की जनता को यह भरोसा देते हैं कि इस पर जो भी कार्रवाई करना आवश्यक है उसे करने में हम कोई कसर नहीं छोड़ेंगे।
बहुत सारे सीआरपीएफ के जवान पाकिस्तान के भेजे हुए आतंकवादियों ने घात लगाकर उनको मौत के घाट उतारा है। मित्रों, इस समय मुझे चिट्ठियां भी आई, अब क्या करोगे, कैसे करोगे? इस वक्त समय है वो जवानों के शहीदों के परिवार के साथ निशब्द उनको संवेदना भेजने का। मगर भारतीय जनता पार्टी की सरकार ने अपना रिकॉर्ड बरोबर रखा है, बरोबर रिकॉर्ड रखा है। उरी की घटना के बाद सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक कर हमने दुश्मन को समझाया था कि अपने आपे में रहो, वरना भारत की फौजें आपका हिसाब किताब ठीक कर सकती है।
This is a dastardly act, but at the same time, I find this as an opportunity through you to also call to question those who, while living in India, while calling themselves or describing themselves as mainstream politicians in Kashmir, tend to be apologetic about all these terror activities. There should also be an equal amount of action or taking to task those who, while living in India, seek ministerial berths through farcical elections by posing as mainstream politicians, and they day night deliver such statements which tend to provide fodder to terrorism.
सीआरपीएफ के जवानों की बड़ी बहादुरी साथ में वो वहाँ पर आतंकियों से लड़ रहे हैं, और ये जानकर ही इस तरीके का डरपोक हमला किया गया है। और इस आईडी ब्लास्ट में हमारे जवानों को जो शहादत मिली है, ये देश का हर नागरिक इसको भूलेगा नहीं। देश के लिए उन्होंने अपना बलिदान दिया है, लेकिन इतना कहकर भी हम सरकार खामोश बैठने वाली नहीं है। ये बहुत दुखद है, हम लोगों को चैलेंज के रूप में हम इसको देखते हैं और इस घटना का हिसाब चुकता होगा। और न ही हमारी इन आतंकियों के खिलाफ की हरकतें जो करते हैं आतंकी, उसके खिलाफ की कार्रवाई रुकेगी नहीं। और भी जवान अपना हौसला बुलंद करके अपने साथियों की इस शहादत का बदला भी लेंगे और इस आतंकी को समाप्त करने का जो हमारा निर्धार है, उस पर हम डटे रहेंगे।
पुलवामा में जो आतंकवादी हमला हुआ है, जिसमें हमारे जवान शहीद हुए हैं, इसकी वजह से हम ये अनुचित समझते हैं कि हम अभी राजनीतिक चर्चा करें। मैं आप सबसे आग्रह करूंगी और रामलाल राही जी से, अवतार सिंह भटाना जी से, जो हमारी पार्टी में आज शामिल होने के लिए यहाँ आए हैं, आप सबसे आग्रह करूंगी कि 2 मिनट की श्रद्धांजलि हम ऑब्जर्व करें शहीद जवानों के लिए। और मैं उनके परिवारों को कहना चाहती हूँ कि इस दुखद घड़ी में एक एक देशवासी आपके साथ है। हम सबको बहुत दुख हुआ है, आप हौसला बनाए रखें, आपके साथ कंधे से कंधे मिलाकर हम खड़े हैं।
Well, earlier on, my colleague Nidhi Razdan had spoken to the former Army Chief General Bikram Singh and asked him about what happens next, what the next steps could conceivably be. Here's what he said.
It's a big loss, but then, this was expected, if you ask me frankly, because in the last few months, there has been a very heavy attrition on the terrorists. I mean, if you see the last 10 days, there were 5, 3, 2 at various places, terrorists being neutralized. So they were under pressure, and it was a logical, conclusion. As far as I'm concerned, I always thought something is going to happen. And here is an incident which I would say has happened after a very, very long time, where a local terrorist has actuated the vehicle in which he was going, laden with the explosives, and killed the 42 of our brave soldiers. It's really sad. But yes, it is a turning point from the point of view of the tactics being employed. For a very long time, the terrorists had refrained from using IDs. There were one incident where IDs were used, but I think with this kind of modus operandi which they have adopted in today's incident, I suppose this is going to be something they're going to resort to in future. Along with, putting IDs which are static along the road from where the convoy is moving, or from the mainland. There are a large number of also these, activities that are going on in terms of construction of dams, roads, where these explosives are used at times, for road construction. For all you know, it may have been pilfered from there. That is one option, one way of having acquired these. The other is that in the past, urea has been used, other chemicals have been used to, make these IDs. So there is a local, resources that are available in the market which people pick up and use them and make these IDs. So it may not be entirely RDX or PK or any other explosive which has been used. It could have been used with urea and other chemicals to explode. But definitely there were a large number of shrapnels, as one could see the bus, the way it was perforated. And it definitely is a cause of concern.
Well, as we end this bulletin, just a reminder that more than anything else at this stage, it's time to remember or think about the families of the CRPF soldiers who were killed today. Families, many of whom would only now be in the process of being informed that their near and dear ones are dead. It's a horrific loss for the country. More than 40 CRPF Jawans dead in Jammu and Kashmir in the worst attack on security forces in Jammu and Kashmir. The government says there will be a response. We don't want to speculate on what that response is going to be or when it's going to be, but one way or the other, this horrific attack by suicide attackers using a vehicle in Jammu and Kashmir has added a new complexity, a new dimension to an already fraught situation on the ground. We're completely out of time. Do stay tuned. We'll be bringing you a lot of programming tomorrow from Srinagar as well, as India comes to terms with this horrific loss.